Imagine moving into a quiet, cozy apartment, thinking you're finally safe. But what if the walls could watch? What if the shadows were alive, silent, patient, and waiting? This is not about ghosts or folklore. It's something far worse, something real. Something that will live in your nightmares forever. Emma was a 28-year-old teacher searching for a budget-friendly apartment near her school. After weeks of hunting, she stumbled upon a charming Victorian-style flat listed for an unbelievably low price. The place was old but spacious, with large wooden windows and creaky wooden floors that seemed to tell stories of forgotten memories. The elderly landlord, Mr. Jacobs, seemed hesitant as he handed over the keys. His wrinkled face darkened as he muttered, "Be careful of the walls. They listen." Emma brushed it off as an old man's eccentric warning and moved in the next day. The first evening was peaceful, almost too quiet. The street outside was deserted, and the only sound came from the faint ticking of her old wall clock. Exhausted from unpacking, she fell asleep, her cat Milo curled up at her feet. At 3:13 a.m., Emma woke up, drenched in sweat. The room was icy cold despite the summer heat. Milo was staring intently at the dark corner near the closet, growling, a sound she had never heard before. Emma whispered, "Milo, stop it. There's nothing there." But deep down, she felt uneasy. The next few nights, Emma started hearing faint whispers, muffled and incomprehensible, as if coming from inside the walls. She dismissed it as old pipes or air drafts, but the whispers grew louder and more distinct. "Emma, we see you." One night, she decided to record the sound on her phone. As she replayed the audio, her heart nearly stopped. The whispers clearly repeated her name, but they weren't distant. They were breathing right into the phone's microphone. Terrified, Emma tried contacting Mr. Jacobs, but the line was disconnected. Desperate for answers, she researched the apartment's history and uncovered a horrifying truth. A decade ago, the building was used as a hideout for a twisted cult known for performing dark rituals involving human sacrifices. The police found no survivors or bodies. Determined to leave, Emma packed her bags that night. But when she tried to open the front door, it wouldn't budge. She pounded, screamed, but the apartment held her captive. Her phone lost all signal, and the lights flickered violently. Suddenly, the floorboards began creaking as if someone, or something, was crawling beneath them. A dark, twisted figure emerged from the wall, a deformed face with hollow eyes, stretched skin, and a twisted, malicious grin. Emma's screams echoed in the empty apartment as clawed hands dragged her into the walls. The next tenant found only one thing left behind, a blood-stained recording of Emma's final words. "They're in the walls. They took me. Run. Run." Have you ever taken a ride late at night, trusting your driver or fellow passengers? But what if the person sitting next to you isn't alive? What if you find yourself trapped, sharing a vehicle with something inhuman? Raj was a hard-working cab driver known for working night shifts in the remote mountain town of Himtala. He'd driven the same lonely routes for years, picking up late-night passengers from deserted roads and isolated villages. One icy winter night, his last ride came from the infamous Old Valley Station, an abandoned train station shrouded in terrifying rumors of disappearances. The pickup request showed Anamika as the passenger, with no phone number provided. Raj hesitated but accepted the ride, thinking it might be a lost traveler. As he waited near the fog-covered platform, the air turned deathly cold. His breath fogged up the windshield, and his radio hissed with static. Suddenly, out of the swirling mist, a tall woman in a faded red sari appeared. Her skin was unnaturally pale, her eyes hollow and lifeless. She opened the cab door without saying a word and quietly settled into the back seat. "Where to, madam?" Raj asked nervously, forcing a polite smile. "Just drive," she whispered, her voice like wind blowing through dead leaves. As the car rolled along the winding mountain road, Raj felt her gaze burning into the back of his neck through the mirror. He cautiously glanced up, but her reflection wasn't there. Heart pounding, he focused on the road. But soon, a soft humming filled the car, a haunting old lullaby that seemed to come from nowhere. Suddenly, the radio crackled again, playing garbled cries for help. In the rearview mirror, Raj saw twisted faces flashing on the screen, faces frozen in terror. The woman's lips were still, but the humming grew louder, closer. Panicking, Raj slammed on the brakes, sending the car skidding to a stop. He turned around. She was gone. Breathing heavily, he checked outside, but the road was deserted. Relieved yet shaken, he returned to the driver's seat. As he restarted the engine, the rearview mirror showed her sitting right beside him, her face twisted into a grotesque grin. "You were supposed to keep driving." The next morning, Raj's empty cab was found crashed at the base of the mountain, its doors wide open. He was never seen again. To this day, travelers claim to hear a haunting lullaby echoing through the misty roads of Old Valley. And some say if you hear it, you're next. We trust our neighbors, we wave at them, share polite conversations, and borrow tools when needed. But what if the smiling face next door hides something unspeakable? What if behind those walls lies a secret so dark it could tear your sanity apart? You might think you know your neighbors, until it's too late. Michael and Sarah, a young married couple, had always dreamed of escaping the city's chaos. After months of searching, they finally found the perfect house in a quiet, picturesque suburban neighborhood. It was affordable, spacious, and surrounded by a beautiful garden. The only oddity was their next-door neighbor, Mr. Gray. He was an elderly, frail man with a permanent, eerie smile plastered across his wrinkled face. His gray eyes seemed to pierce through you, unblinking and cold. Despite his unsettling appearance, he was polite, too polite. When they moved in, Mr. Gray came over with a basket of homemade cookies, smiling wider than ever. He held Sarah's hand a second too long as he spoke. "Welcome to the neighborhood. Be careful at night. And whatever you do, stay away from my basement. No matter what you hear." They laughed it off, thinking he was just an eccentric old man trying to be mysterious. But Sarah felt a chill creep down her spine that she couldn't explain. The first few nights were peaceful, until one stormy night. As rain lashed against the windows and thunder rolled across the sky, Sarah woke up at 2:45 a.m. to a faint metallic clanking sound. It seemed to come from Mr. Gray's house, specifically the basement. She shook Michael awake. "Do you hear that?" Michael groaned, half asleep. Probably some old furnace or the wind banging pipes. But Sarah wasn't convinced. The noise wasn't random, it was rhythmic, like someone dragging heavy chains across a concrete floor, followed by muffled cries, human cries. The next morning, Michael found Sarah standing at the window, staring at Mr. Gray's house with wide, frightened eyes. "We should call the police," she whispered. Michael tried to calm her down. "Babe, we have no proof. He's an old man living alone. Let's not jump to conclusions." Sarah reluctantly agreed, but remained on edge. A week later, their golden retriever Max went missing. They searched the entire neighborhood, calling his name until their throats were raw. That evening, as Michael checked the backyard one last time, he found something chilling, deep bloody claw marks on their fence, as if Max had tried desperately to escape something that dragged him toward Mr. Gray's house. Michael's heart pounded as he followed the bloody trail, which ended at the door to Mr. Gray's basement. He backed away slowly, trembling, and hurried back inside, locking every door and window. That night, they sat in the dark, clutching a baseball bat and a kitchen knife, jumping at every creak and shadow. Unable to sleep, Sarah was drawn to the window, unable to shake the feeling of being watched. At around 3 a.m., lightning illuminated Mr. Gray's basement window, and she saw it. A pale, disfigured face stared back, its skin stretched too tightly over sharp cheekbones, eyes wide with terror, lips sewn shut with thick black thread. It mouthed a desperate, silent scream before disappearing into the dark. Sarah stumbled back, gasping, but when she looked again, the window was empty. "Michael, there's someone in his basement," she whispered in panic. Determined to end this nightmare, Michael grabbed the bat, and they stormed next door. The house was silent, its windows dark and lifeless. But the basement door stood slightly ajar, inviting them in. With shaking hands, Michael pushed the door open, revealing a steep, narrow staircase descending into complete darkness. The stench of decay hit them like a punch. As they reached the bottom, the dim light from Michael's flashlight revealed a scene of unspeakable horror. Rusty cages lined the walls, each containing twisted, skeletal figures. Some were still alive, their faces pale and hollow-eyed, their mouths stitched shut. The faint metallic clanking was coming from a woman shackled to the wall, desperately pulling against her restraints. Before they could react, the basement door slammed shut behind them, locking with a loud click. Michael shone the flashlight toward the stairs. "Run!" he shouted. As they sprinted up the stairs, something moved in the shadows, a tall, deformed figure with skin stretched tight like rotting leather, its hollow eyes glowing faintly. It was Mr. Gray, but not human anymore. He opened his mouth unnaturally wide, revealing sharp, needle-like teeth. "I warned you," he rasped. "Stay out of my basement." The light flickered, and then darkness consumed them. Months later, a new couple moved into the quiet suburban home, finding it strangely affordable. Their only neighbor was a polite old man named Mr. Gray. He greeted them with a warm smile and a basket of cookies. "Welcome to the neighborhood. Be careful at night. And whatever you do, stay out of my basement."